All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience today. Sorry we had some little bit of technical difficulties here, but hopefully you guys are all gonna be able to join us here, have some fun with our designs today. We're gonna be doing some fun French, kind of a two-tone look today. So I'm just gonna get my nail ready to go and then we'll get started. Hello, hello, everyone. If you didn't see on our Discord server today, we're going to be doing a fun two-tone design. If you did see on our Discord server, you're all ready to go here, and you probably have a little bit of an idea on the colors and things that we're going to be using today. So make sure to check out our Discord. Make sure to join us on that so that you have a little bit of an update from time to time. So welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Just shortening up the nail that we're going to work on here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, looks like a lot of our regulars are joining us today, so thank you guys all for joining us. I want to make sure my camera's right on center. There we go. I think that's going to be good. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on our nails. And just a quick little teaser, this is the design and length and shape that we're going to be working on today. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a shorter nail than maybe we're used to doing, but I am going to be using our full cover Coffin nails, and we're going to do a little bit more of a tapered square, a shorter tapered square, just like we've got on here. So to start that service, I'm always going to start by pushing back the cuticles. And I've got my magic wand here. We're going to push back the cuticles. And if you're working on a full set, make sure to go through all of those cuticles, push those all back really good. This way, we're going to push back those cuticles. And also while we're pushing back the cuticles, we're going to be talking with our client about what service we're going to be doing today, maybe what art we're going to be doing, and then we can go into the rest of our application. But taking that little bit of extra time to push back those cuticles and have that conversation with the client is going to help in your service time, and it's going to you're not going to end up taking too much time doing your consultation just sitting and staring at the nails. All right, you guys, a lot of comments about my nails in the chat here. I am seeing those. I redid my nails yesterday. I love that you guys noticed that. The colors that I used on mine is Baby Royal, is our ManiQ gel polish. And then I used, let me see, I used Punk Rock. Let me grab them here. I used Punk Rock, which is a blue glitter, and then also Dragon Fruit, which is our pink. So that's what I've got on my nails there. So if you guys want to try that out, do your own nails, post them on social media, and make sure you tag us so that we can see that you're working on there. Okay, we've got our cuticles pushed back. Let's go ahead and size out our tips. So when we're sizing the tips, and notice that I haven't gone through and done the rest of my prep on the nail yet. I always like to size out my tips before I do the prep, so that way any filing or any dust or anything that I do filing on the tips isn't going to contaminate that re-prepped surface. So we don't have to go through and redo that. So we're going to start by sizing out our tips. Today we're using the coffin shape. So these are going to be a little bit tapered when we do cut them down. We're going to shorten these up a little bit, but we are going to size these out to make sure that they're going to fit, first of all, from sidewall to sidewall. Let me come in nice and close so you can see. So sorry, you guys. First, we're going to check our C curve. I got ahead of myself. We're going to check our C curve to make sure that the curve of that natural nail is going to fit the curve of the tip. So what I mean by the curve is if we look down at the barrel of the nail from this direction and we look at the curve of the tip from this direction, we want to make sure that this curve and this curve are going to be similar. So we want to make sure that this tip is going to fit onto the shape of this natural nail. Now, on our trainer hands, these are a little bit of a flatter C curve, whereas sometimes with the tips, they're going to be a little bit of a tighter curve. If you find that the C curve of your natural nail is more flat than what your tips are, you're going to want to go to a larger size. So that way, let me actually show you guys this really quick. I'm going to grab our largest size here. So you can see, so our largest size is on the left here and a little bit of a smaller size on the right. You can see that on the larger size of the tip, that well is going to be a little bit more flat. So that C curve of the tip is going to be a little bit more flat. On the smaller sizes, it's going to be a little bit of a tighter curve. So you may have to, if you do have flat nails, you may have to go to a larger size to make sure that that C curve is going to fit. And then you can file off those edges to make sure that it fits from side to side on the nail. Now on our nail here, the C curve of our, let's see, I've got a size 2 there. The C curve of our size 2 is really going to fit pretty well onto that C curve of our natural nail. And it is going to hang off just ever so slightly on the edge. So I am going to check to see if a larger size, or actually, sorry guys, a smaller size, if a smaller size is going to still fit that C curve nice, but still fit from side to side. So let's grab a smaller size. So just one small size, one size smaller is going to give us a size 3. Now if we take a look at that, this one still does look like it fits that C curve pretty well. I'm using just a little bit of pressure to set that down on there. A little bit of pressure is okay. If you had to use, I'm going to find a much smaller tip here now, you guys. If you had to use a lot of pressure, see how this one, if I just set it onto that nail, it doesn't fit from side to side. It doesn't fit that C curve. But if I were to press that down and put a lot of pressure on there, then it is going to fit from side to side. The thing with this size though is once you let go, that tip is going to have a tendency to pop back up. These tips have that curve to them and they want to keep their curve. So if you go in and you press out that curve and you flatten that out onto a flatter nail, as soon as you let go, that curve is going to go back into its original shape. So you want to make sure that you're not using too much pressure and having to really force that tip down onto the nail. You want to go with something maybe around the size 3 so that you don't have to really press that down, but that tip is going to fit from side to side. Now, still with this size 3, it is still hanging off the edges just ever so slightly. So if I look from one side to the other, you can actually see a little bit more on this side that it's hanging off just a little bit. That's actually what we want when we're using our tip and jewel adhesive. And that's what we're going to be using today to adhere our nails. And I'll show you guys that in just a second here. But if you were sizing your tips and you were just going to be using a glue, like a brush-on glue or something like that to adhere the nails, then you could find a size that fits from sidewall to sidewall and that C curve, and it fits exactly to that edge. So like this one, you can see right down along the edge here, that fits right down to that edge. It's not hanging over. I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit. So it's not hanging over at all. This would be a good fit if you're just using a glue to adhere this. But because we're using our tip and jewel adhesive, this is a thicker gel. So you can see that it's a very thick gel in there. And this is going to take up a little bit more space in the well of the tip versus just a regular glue. So that's why we're going to go with this little bit larger size so it is hanging off the edges just ever so slightly, because once we put that tip and jewel adhesive on underneath here, it's going to raise that tip up just a little bit. So you can see, I'm going to over exaggerate this again, you guys. If you have that tip hanging off the edge just a little bit and you use that tip and jewel adhesive, it's going to raise that tip up just a little bit, and then it's going to come nice and even with that lower arch. So we're going to size this with this little bit larger size. We're going to kind of customize this right up around our corners here just a little bit, but I think this is going to be the size that we want to work with. So let me set off to the side here the rest of the tips. Now, one thing I will do before I go back into the rest of my prep on the nail here is I'm going to go through and I'm going to customize this tip just a little bit, because if you look at it, you can see that the top area right up by the cuticle here, this is a little bit wider. It's a little bit more square than what my actual cuticle is. So I'm going to go through with my file and just round this out a little bit so that it's not hanging off those corners by the cuticle. I'm going to grab my 180 file buffer combo. I really like to use the file buffer combo just because it's really a 2-in-1. Now I could go and grab my 150 grit file, and you guys, this has definitely been used a lot on my trainer hand here, but make sure you're always using a new file on your clients. But the reason that I like the 180 file buffer combo is because as I'm filing and customizing, I'm filing around the edges, but as I do that filing, let me see if I can show you guys right around the edge. You get a little bit of that frayed edge. And for that, I'm just going to flip over to the buffer side and I'm going to buff off that little bit of a frayed edge. So this way, I'm not going to have to worry about if I was using the 150 grit file and filing, then I would have to put that one down and I would have to find my other buffer and then I could go through and buff that. But when you're working with that file buffer combo, you got the file on one side, so you can shape that up and then you can just flip over nice and easily without having to actually go find another buffer, and you can take down that frayed edge. So it just makes things a little bit easier for you. Now let's take a look at the sizing here. Looks like that's going to fit much better right up into that cuticle area, nice and rounded right up through there. Okay, I think we're good to go with that. So we're going to set our tip off to the side. Now we're going to go back and we're going to finish prepping this nail. So I started by pushing back the cuticles. Now I'm going to use my electric file. I'm going to change out my sanding band here and I'm going to grab a brand new one. So we're always going to use a brand new sanding band, whether you're working on yourself, whether you're working on your clients or your trainer hands, always work with a brand new sanding band so that it has the proper grit and it's got the proper, or it's going to be a nice clean bit to work with. So I'm going to turn my E-file to about 5,000 RPMs and just barely making contact with that sanding band to the natural nail, right up around that cuticle, and then I'm going to just feather through the rest of the surface of the nail. And what this is going to do, this is going to help to remove the shine and create a little bit of texture on this nail so that our gel is going to adhere really well. And it's also going to help to break up any surface oils that might be on the nail and help to just kind of loosen those up a little bit. Now we're going to grab our manicure brush. I'm going to dust this off really well. I still got my tip down here, so I'm going to move that out of the way here a little bit. Then we're going to grab our swipe. So swipe is our cleanser. I'm going to pump a little bit of that onto my manicure brush. And I'm going to use that and I'm going to dust off the nail with the swipe. And now this is going to help to really cleanse that nail surface and remove any germs, any bacteria, any dust, any oils, anything that's on the nail that you don't want, the swipe is going to help remove. So just going through really quick and easily, removing all of that dust, all of the oils. And if we come back in nice and close, you're going to notice that that's going to dry back to that nice chalky look. Okay, with nice dry look. We don't want it to look wet at this point. If it does still look like there's swipe on there, just give it a little bit longer time to dry out. Okay, but you want to make sure that it is nice and dry before you put your protein bond on. Now, protein bond is our anchor. This is what's going to really hold our product on the nail. And we're going to apply 2 nice even coats of this. And I like to start from the center, work down towards that free edge, out to the sides. And the reason that I start from the center and work out to the sides and now back to the cuticle is so that I don't flood this product onto the nail and I don't flood it up into that cuticle area. If you get too much of the protein bond up into the cuticle area and touching the skin, first of all, that could lead to allergic reactions, contact dermatitis, anything like that. Any product that you're using, you want to make sure that you are keeping it off the skin. So you want to apply it sparingly and very carefully. Now, when I start from the center, that puts the majority of that product in the center, and then I can work that out to the side. So again, I'm not flooding that product into the cuticle area and getting that onto the skin. Okay, now 2 coats. That's usually what I do when I'm applying any kind of enhancement, whether it's acrylic, hard gel, acrylic, hard gel, or the gel with the tips. So next thing I'm going to do is we're going to take that tip. Now, when you're working with a gel, gels do not like to stick to a shiny or a smooth surface. So on our tip, we've got a very smooth surface and we've got a shiny surface. So to combat that, we could either use our electric file and we could go through and we could etch the surface of the well and create some texture to that. Or with this style of tip, we can actually use our protein bond and we'll take a little bit of the protein bond and we'll use that protein bond in the well of the tip. Now this isn't really going to etch the well, but it is going to create a really sticky surface, and this is going to adhere to our tip and jewel adhesive, which is going to adhere to that natural nail. So a couple of options for you there, whichever you prefer to do. Now we're going to take our tip and jewel adhesive, and let's go ahead and open that up. I'm going to be using my brush and spatula. So it's a dual kind of a tool. So it's got a brush on one end, and then on the other end it has a spatula. And I like to have both of these tools handy. The spatula is what I'm really going to use to scoop out that gel, but I like to have that brush just in case I need to maybe clean up around the edges or anything like that. So just a nice easy tool to work with. So we're going to take a little scoop of our gel. Actually, a pretty decent sized scoop of our gel. Scoop that up, tap off those little stringy edges that are hanging down. And we're going to take that and just set that, actually let me come in nice and close so you can see. We're going to set that right down into the well of the tip. I'm going to press that down in there and basically scrape the product off of my spatula. And then I'm going to bring that out towards the edges. Now I'm not going to bring the product all the way to the edge. If you take a nice close look here, you can see there's a little bit of space right along the edges here, a little bit of space right along the edge here. I do leave that little bit of space just in case, so that when I put my tip onto the nail, that product is actually going to squeeze out a little bit to the edges. And if I didn't leave that little bit of a gap at the edge, that product has a tendency to squeeze off the sides. So you want to make sure just leave a tiny little space right around that edge so that you don't have any product squeezing out and touching the skin. Okay. All right, let me show you guys from the side view how we're going to apply this tip, because I feel like it's easier to see from the side view than it is sometimes from this view. So as I apply the tip, I'm not just going to set it flat down onto the nail. I'm going to start at a slight downward angle. I'm going to connect that back cuticle area. Now, when I set this onto the nail, I'm not setting it right at that cuticle area. So I'm not setting it right here. I'm actually going to leave just a slight gap. So right in between there. The reason that I'm going to leave that little bit of a gap is because I'm going to set it down and I'm going to slide that tip back. What that does is that's going to push that gel underneath the well of the tip. So again, I don't have any product squeezing out that back end. Okay. So again, we're going to start from, I'm going to show you guys from the side view. So we're going to set that tip down, slide it back, and then we're going to rock the tip down. As I'm rocking that tip down, you're going to see that gel connect to the nail and connect to the tip. So that way it's going to press out any air bubbles that might be in there, and we don't end up having little pockets in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Actually, you guys, before I even apply that, one thing I want to show you is our touch cure light. So this little curing light, let me get that into camera. So this little curing light is going to help to freeze our product into place. I'm just going to turn that on. I'm going to tap the end, and then when I'm ready to cure, I'll just tap the end and that light will come on for me. Okay, so that's what I have here ready to go. And I like to use that touch cure light because it's going to freeze my tip into place. And especially if I'm working on a full set, I can put one nail on here, freeze it into place with the light for maybe 10 to 20 seconds or so, just enough to set that product into place so the tip isn't going to move. Then I can go on to my next nail, apply the tip, freeze it into place, apply the tip, freeze it into place, apply the tip, freeze it into place. Once you have all of your nails done and set into place, then you can go into your full UV LED light and cure everything completely. Okay, so just a nice tool to have on hand here. So let's go ahead, whoops, turn that off. Let's go ahead and set our tip down. So like I said, we're going to set that tip down. I'm going to slide that tip back a little bit, back up into that cuticle area. And then we're going to rock this tip down. Now notice right through here, you're starting to see that adhesive connect to the natural nail, connect to that tip. I actually think I need just a little bit more product right in that well. So what I did, I put some pressure onto the nail or onto that cuticle area, pulled that tip off, and that's going to drag off that extra or that gel that's on there because I feel like I need just a little bit more. So I'm going to scoop just a tiny little bit more on there, just putting that right at that cuticle area. So it's okay if you need to add a little bit more, that's just fine. Okay. And you saw that I used that brush end to clean up that little bit that was kind of hanging off the end. So that's why I like this tool, just because it's a nice, easy tool to use and it's got multiple uses for you. So let's try that again. We're going to set that down, slide that back towards the cuticle, rock that down. And again, as I'm rocking this down, it's going to connect all the way from sidewall to sidewall, and it's going to press out that little air pocket that's underneath there. I'm going to press that all the way down to the end of that natural nail. And we're good there. I'm going to slide that tip back just a little bit more so it's a little bit closer to that cuticle. I'm going to hold that right there, and I'm going to turn on my curing light. So again, this is our touch cure light. So as I need to use that, I turn the power on, and then it's on, and then I can just tap that to turn that off. So I just had that set into place for maybe about 10 to 20 seconds or so, just enough to freeze my product so it's not going to move or wiggle. Now at this point, again, if I were working on a full set, I would apply my next tip, freeze that into place, okay, 10 to 20 seconds. Apply my next tip, freeze that into place 10 to 20 seconds. Apply my next tip, freeze that into place 10 to 20 seconds. Now I need to get this into the full UV LED light to cure completely, and that's going to go in for a full 60 seconds, okay? Now, while that is in there, I am going to grab a new file, and let me find one here. You guys always make sure that you're using nice, clean, brand new files when you're working on your clients. And when you do get a brand new file, I always use my prep file. I have a little file that I just use for prepping. I'm going to run my prep file all the way across the top surface of my file. Make sure that I'm taking off any of those sharp edges, because you don't want to be cutting your client or yourself if you're working on yourself. So make sure that you're using another file to remove any of those sharp edges. Okay. Now, again, our nails are in the light for a full 60 seconds, and I think we are good to go there. So at this point, our nail is cured out. Oops, there you guys go. Our nail's cured out. It is ready to go. We're going to shorten this up. So you notice that we've got a little bit of a shorter nail here. We're going to shorten this up, and you can use either your tip cutter, or if you have a toenail clipper. Let me show you guys here really quick. I have a couple of different toenail clippers that I like to use. Now, depending on the shape that I'm cutting, I may just use my straight edge toenail clipper, or if I'm going with a little bit more of a rounded shape, I would use my rounded toenail clipper. Now, because I do actually have a tip cutter, I'm going to use that, so it's going to make my life easier. We'll just slide that tip cutter on there. Now, I actually want to check and see. I'm going to measure. So I want to make sure when I'm doing a full set, I want these 3 center nails to be about the same length, and then your pinky and your thumbs can just be proportionate. So when I do cut the tips, I will measure, and here's where it's tricky. Everybody seems to want to measure from here. They want to measure from the free edge, but when you're measuring the nails, you actually want to measure from the cuticle area to the end, because some nails are going to be short like this. Some nail beds are going to be longer like this. So you want to make sure that you're measuring from cuticle to free edge, and that's how you're going to know it's going to be the right length. So I'm actually going to turn this finger, or turn this whole hand around, and I'm going to hold those 2 nails up together like that. So again, I'm measuring from my cuticle to about here. So that's going to be the length that I'm going to cut. So now I have to kind of keep that in mind when I turn this around. But I just want to give you guys that visual of where you're going to be measuring. You're not going to be measuring necessarily the free edge. You're going to be measuring from the cuticle all the way to the end to make sure that those are the same length. Okay, so let's go ahead and clip this shorter then. Slide that right on. I'm actually going to look at this straight on. So this way I can see exactly how much I'm cutting off. And a lot of times I'll go a little bit longer than what I think it needs to go. And you can definitely see that one's definitely a little bit longer. but I would rather go a little too long and have to take a little bit more off than go too short and have to shorten up the rest of the set. So we're still just a little on the long side here. So we'll take that down just a little bit more. And I think now with our shaping and filing, that's going to be about the right length. Okay. Now, if I was going to be doing more of an almond shape, that's where I would use my rounded toenail clippers, and I could clip in on those edges and I can round out those edges. So just whatever shape you're working on, you can customize that how you want to. Okay. All right, so we're going to grab our file here. I'm going to just go through and clean up my edges, clean off the sides here, just making sure if there is any of that tip. See right on the edge here, there's a little bit hanging off that edge. We're going to come right underneath that tip and just smooth that out. Now, you guys, you can see as I'm filing here, it looks like I'm filing on the skin right down here, but because I already took those sharp edges off, it's not going to cut that skin. So that's the reason that you want to make sure that you are taking off those sharp edges from your file so that you don't end up filing on the skin or damaging or cutting that skin. Okay. Let's just give that a nice straight free edge. And then I think we're good. So I'm going to go now back to my sanding band. So that sanding band that we were using to prep the nails, I'm going to use this to clean up that cuticle area just a little bit so that it's going to be nice and flush down to that natural nail. I'm going to work at about, I would say about 6,000 to 7,000 RPMs. And we're going to just work right up around that cuticle area. I'm keeping my bit on the tip, so on that actual plastic. I'm not touching that natural nail down there. And I'm just tapering down the tip down to that natural nail so there's not going to be a ledge or anything that's going to catch. So just gently, just like when we were prepping that natural nail, we're working in shorter little strokes until everything blends all the way through. And now we're nice and blended. I'm going to work all the way through the rest of that nail. We're going to remove the shine. Just like I was talking about earlier, when we use the protein bond in the well of the tip, because that's a shiny surface, gel is not going to want to stick to that shiny surface. So we want to make sure that we're removing the shine because we're going to be applying a gel polish over the top of this nail. So just going to check my edges here, making sure everything is blended, and make sure, you guys, I don't know if you can see that. Do you see that tiny little area right down here that still looks a little bit shiny? If we don't go through and really make sure those edges are shine free, same thing on this edge over here, that is where your gel polish tends to start separating or peeling. So if you don't file that edge, if you maybe leave that tiny little bit of shine on there, your gel polish is probably not going to want to adhere. And again, you're going to have issues with your polish peeling. So make sure that you do go through and completely remove the shine from the whole entire nail. I just want to clean up my edge here one more time, just a little bit right around that edge, right around that corner. So because we were using the coffin shaped tips, we now have a slight taper to the free edge. And that's going to be a fun look that we're going to wear today. All right, we're just going to dust that off really, really well. Now, we do want to cleanse this nail again, but before we were using our swipe, at this point, we don't want to use the swipe again. Swipe has a little bit of acetone to it, and acetone would actually go through and re-smooth out this surface. We want to make sure we're not smoothing that surface out because we need that texture. So instead of using the swipe, we're going to use our ManiQ Cleanser, and this is going to be our cleanser for our tips. Okay, so this does not have any acetone to it. So it's not going to smooth out that tip. It's not going to take away that texture that we just created on there. This is going to give us a nice clean surface without removing that texture. All right, you guys, before we get into our design, make sure if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, join our community, continue to get free education, and just have some fun with us. All right, so what we're going to be doing, we're going to be creating a pastel color. So what I've got on the nails here, I actually have 3 different colors that I've custom mixed. So I've got Orbit, And you guys, these are our emission control gel paints. So these are going to be some beautiful colors, and they're highly, highly pigmented. So a lot of fun that you can do with these. So the blue is Orbit. For that kind of minty green, it's actually Sonic, which originally it's kind of a teal color. And then we've also got Clash, which is our lime green. And then the color that I'm actually going to mix for you guys today is Mega Jam. So that's what we're going to be using on the nail here. Now, to create the pastel look, I've combined the solid colors with Fizz, which is our white. So that's what I'm going to be combining today on camera. So just to give you some options, though, some other fun colors that you can use. But what I did on these nails is exactly what I'm going to show you on this one. So make sure that you decide what colors you like. You can mix it up, you can change it up, you can have multiple colors, but your choice. All right, so before we get into the colors, I'm going to add one more coat of our protein bond. And this is going to help to adhere our gel to the nail. So just like we applied it to the natural nail to give that nail a tacky surface and a tacky finish to grab onto, we're going to do one more coat of protein bond onto our tip. Okay, so one coat of protein bond. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm doing my French manicures is I actually like to put down a coat of a sheer pink. And we've got two options today. So we've got Sheer Pink 101. Let's see. Whoops, let me do 101. So Sheer Pink 101, which is a little bit more on the pink side. So if you were doing maybe like concealer pink gel or the cover pink acrylic, this one would work really well for working over that. On today's nails, since we've got a little bit more of a peachy kind of a colored nail body here, I'm going to work with Sheer Pink 102. So Sheer Pink 102 is a little bit more on that peachy side. Now, these are sheer colors, so they're not going to give a lot of extra color to the nail, but to me, I love using these because I feel like it just smooths out the look of that nail bed underneath. So we're going to apply one thin coat of our Sheer Pink 10, which one do we have? 102. And again, it's just going to just make everything look a little bit smoother, and it's just going to really pop the color of that natural nail bed underneath. Okay, you can see though on that free edge, whoops, you don't have a lot of color, but it really just enhances the color of that nail bed underneath. Okay, now this is going to go into the light. This is going to cure for, I would say, a minimum of 30 seconds, but up to a minute. And while that is curing, I'm going to show you our color mixes. So on here, I've already mixed the colors that I've already used. So those were the colors that I used. Just wanted to give you guys a little insight on that. So I am going to mix our other one here separately. So I'm going to grab my spatula. I'm going to take a little bit of that Mega Jam. So again, that was that bright pink color. I'm going to make sure to mix that up. Make sure that your gel paints are mixed up. If they've been sitting for a little while, they can settle just a little bit. So make sure to mix those up. I'm going to take a little scoop of that gel paint. I'm going to set that right onto our tile. And make sure to clean off your spatula before you go into your next color so that you don't contaminate that next color. And we're going to take a little bit of our Fizz. So again, Fizz is our white. And if you're making pastel colors, you can really use any colors and just add white to them to create that pastel look. So I'm going to take, I would say probably about equal parts of the pink and the white. We're going to set that down on there, and then I'm just going to start to blend those colors together. Just kind of mushing them all together. It's almost like maybe if you're spreading your butter on your toast in the morning. That's kind of the technique that I'm using here. So just mixing that color really well. If maybe you feel like you want it a little bit more pastel, do you guys want it more pastel? Let me know in the chat. Let me know if you want more pastel or if you like it. But if you do want more pastel, you can add a little bit more white to it, soften it up a little bit, and create whatever combinations you want. All right, I think, all right, you guys, I think you're saying that it looks okay, looks good, you like it? Okay. we'll just leave it as it is, but I do want to make sure, oops, there was a little piece of dust right in there. Let's clean that up. I do want to make sure all of that color is mixed in together and I don't see any streakiness to it. And I think we're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my spatula here, set my gel paints off to the side, and now our nail is cured, so that that layer of gel polish is cured out. So to do our French manicure, I've got a couple of different brushes I'm going to use. So I've got my micro detailer here on the left. So this is a really teeny tiny brush. I've got my liner brush or my striper brush on the right here. So it's a little bit of a longer brush. So depending on what I'm doing, I'm going to use probably both of those today. And then I'm also going to be using my, let me come back out here. This is our Pro Gel Sculptor. And this is a gel brush. Now this one is a little bit more of kind of a rounded brush or an oval brush. And this is what I'm going to use to clean up my smile lines and maybe to polish on a little bit more of that gel onto the free edge. So let's start though with our actual smile line. Let me come in nice and close so you guys can see this. So I think I'm going to grab my liner brush here. I'm going to roll my brush into that gel paint, really load up my brush, and then we'll just kind of touch the surface of that gel. Now I'm going to create an outline for our smile line. And when you're working on smile lines, you guys, I have to adjust here really quick so I can make sure that I'm looking straight at this nail. I know you guys are seeing it from just a slight angle here. But when you're doing your smile lines, you're going to pick a center point where you want the lowest part of your smile line. So right down in here, that's going to be your lowest part of your smile line. So pick a point where you want that lowest part right there. And you're going to pick a point where you want your highest point of your smile line. So up into those corners. Okay. So I'm going to pick a point right here, put a dot. I'm going to come straight across. I'm not putting a line across, but I'm lifting up my brush. I'm coming straight across and I'm putting another dot on the other side. So now you guys can see this is where my outline for my smile line is going to be. So this way, by putting these little dots on both sides, I know that both corners of my smile line are going to be the same height. You don't want one where, maybe one side has a point down here and then it comes all the way up onto the side here. You want to make sure that you're creating those dots evenly from side to side, so that way you know your smile line is going to be even. Okay. All right, you guys, again, make sure if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button before I do our smile line here. And I'm just reloading up my brush a little bit more. Now notice where I'm positioning my hands. I'm making sure that I've got good pressure into my fingers over here, so I've got a lot more balance. And I'm going to take a deep breath because you guys, when I do line art like this or when I do really detailed work, sometimes I tend to get shaky. So first of all, making sure that my hand is balancing and that I breathe, that is going to help me when I do my smile lines. So just take a breath. If you get a little shaky, take a breath. Now I'm going to connect this point to this point, and then we'll connect that point to that point. So we're going to start at the left side. I'm just going to sweep my brush right down to that center point. I'm going to come back up to my right side and sweep down to that center point. Now, is our smile line perfect? Nope, that's okay. Okay, we're just creating an outline. I'm going to take maybe just a little bit more of that gel paint. I'm going to bring that back over to the side here. And I think I like that. I'm going to make sure that my points come all the way up to the corner. Same thing here, all the way up to the corner. You don't want that little point to just fade out. And then I'm going to just cap that edge. Pick up a little bit more of that paint. Same thing over here. We're going to cap that edge. Now, I could use this brush and I could go through and I could paint in that whole entire free edge, but you guys, it's going to take a long time. So that's where my gel brush is going to come in. I'm going to take a little bit more of that color and I'm just going to blend that all the way through that whole entire free edge. Actually, I'm going to cap my free edge first here real quick. So cap your free edge and then we'll go through and we'll brush all the way through to get that color all the way down that whole entire free edge. Now, if you feel like it's going on maybe a little bit streaky, maybe it's not perfect, you can add a second coat, and I think I'm going to do that. But before I cure this and do a second coat, I do want to clean up a little bit. I got a little bit of my product off the side here, so make sure you've got your orange wood stick handy so that you can clean that off. But I'm going to clean up my smile line. Now, I'm going to use that same brush that I used to brush on that color. I am going to clean that out, and I'm using just a little table towel here. I'm going to make sure that all of that color is cleaned out, and I'm going to tuck that brush together so it forms a little bit more of an oval shape. And I'm going to use that brush to just come through and clean up my smile line. I don't have anything on here. I don't have any swipe or any other cleansers or anything like that on the brush. Just the dry brush now. I'm going to clean that out, bring that back to that little tapered edge, and clean up my smile line. Now, if I need to, if it's easier for me, I can take that hand and turn that hand around, and I can clean up my smile line from this view. So if it's easier for you, sometimes it is easier for me to clean up my smile from this direction. Whichever angle is easier for you, you can do that. Okay, but just cleaning that edge up. Now, at this point, don't worry if your smile line isn't 100% perfect. I know we always want our smile lines as perfect as we can get, but we're going to be doing a second line. So we don't necessarily have to be completely perfect on that, okay? I am going to go into the light and freeze this into place for maybe another 30 seconds or so, just to set that into place. And then we'll go ahead and do a second coat, and then we'll use, I'm going to grab my liner, or this, you guys, this is my micro detailer. So my micro detailer is what I'm going to use to draw in that really teeny tiny line. So you can see there is a difference. I know when you're working with small brushes like this, they all just look tiny, but that micro detailer is going to be much smaller and much easier to create that really crisp line than that the liner brush. Okay, so our nail is cured for about 30 seconds or so. I am going to go back and do a second coat. You can see there's a couple areas that maybe it's a little bit streaky, maybe not quite as full coverage as I would think, or that I would like. So we'll just take a little bit more of that gel paint and go over that one more time, just so we get really good coverage. Now, as I'm going over this second coat, am I going to be worrying too much about my smile line? No, because that smile line is already in there. If I do get that little bit of product up over the top, I'm still going to use my gel brush here. I'm going to clean that out, tuck that together. I'm still going to use that to clean up that smile line, but I've already got that smile line in there underneath on that first layer. So with my second layer here, I'm not going to worry too much if my smile line is not perfect, because I'm just going to wipe through and it's going to create that perfect smile line, or it's really going to just uncover that perfect smile line that we had on there originally. Okay, all right. Again, we're going to go into the light. We're going to freeze that back into place. Now at this point, we have our pastel color, but we're going to use the color directly from the pot, and that's going to be a more bold line. So you can see that we're going to have our pastel, and then we're also going to have our bold color. So again, we're going to grab our micro detailer brush, and that's that really teeny tiny brush. Now sometimes I will take a little bit of that gel paint and I'll put that onto my tile. So sometimes I like to work with it on the tile, sometimes I like to work with it out of the jar. Just depends on what you're comfortable with. Okay. All right, so we've got our smile line set into place here. Let me turn this back around there. Okay, so again, just like we did with our larger brush, I'm going to roll my micro detailer brush through that gel paint, and we're going to pick up just a little bit of that. Actually, I might just dab just right into that jar and pick up a tiny little bead on there. Now, I like to start in the center. If you want to start from your sides and work in, you can do that. I like to start in the center, and I'm going to touch my brush right down in the middle of that smile line. I'm going to pull that, basically just outlining that smile line that we have. So just pulling that out to the sides, creating that really pretty smile line. So that really pretty accent to our smile line. I'm going to take a little bit more of our color, bring that right out to the edge. Now again, I could come back in and I could start on my other side here, or if it's easier for you, again, you can turn that finger around. So work at the angles that are going to be comfortable for you. So this way you're going to get a nice crisp smile line. So again, I'm going to start right in the center, kind of laying my brush down onto the nail and pulling to the side. And we'll just touch this up a little bit, making sure everything is as straight and smooth as I can get it. But again, you guys, if you need to, you can use your other brush to do a little bit of cleanup. So that same brush that I was using before, I can go through and I can use that to touch up that smile line from the top part, so from inside here, or I can also use that to clean up underneath. So if there is anything that you need to fix, anything that you need to touch up, maybe it's not quite as smooth as you would like it, you can use that, that brush to clean everything up. And I think I'm just going to touch up my smile line here. I want just a little bit more of a bold color. And I think we are looking good. Maybe just one other quick little touch up. And you guys, when you're doing smile lines, especially a double smile line like this, make sure if you're working on clients, make sure that you are booking out enough time for it, because smile lines do take a while. They, you know, every little minor detail is noticeable. So you want to make sure that you have enough time to properly do your design and make sure that it's nice and clean. And you guys, this is why you do need to be charging extra for your smile lines, okay? I'm going to get this back into the light here. Just actually, with this one, I think I'm going to use my Touch Cure light, and I'm just going to use this to kind of freeze that into place, set that pink into place, and then we'll go ahead and top coat. But again, if you are doing this service on a client, they do take a little bit of extra time. And I always say that I consider my French manicures nail art. So you have to be charging for your nail art, and you have to be charging for your time that it's going to take. So make sure that you are charging appropriately. Okay, so just probably about 10 to 20 seconds on there or so to freeze that into place. And then if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button before we finish our design here. And you guys, to finish this, I'm going to be using our Ultimate Finish Gel. Now this is a thicker top coat, and I like to use the thicker top coat because we've got the extra layers of gel paint on top. So if we use the Ultimate Finish, being a little thicker, it's going to kind of smooth out that surface, and we're not going to feel that, that little ledge between our layers. All right, you guys, if you have not already started it, go ahead and start the top coat chant in the chat. And if you are new to our channel, like I said, make sure to subscribe. Those of you that have subscribed, I see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that so much, you guys. But let's go ahead and start our top coat chant in the chat. And we'll get our top coat on here. Now, normally you want to make sure that you are curing the Ultimate Finish for a full 60 seconds. But I usually just kind of freeze this into place for about 30 seconds, and then I show you guys the final look. So got our top coat on there. Let me freeze that into place, and then we will go ahead and show you the final look. So one more time, the colors that I used, we used our Mega Jam. So Mega Jam and Fizz are the ones that I mixed here for you guys on camera. And then we also used Orbit, Sonic, and Clash for the other nails. And where did I lose my palette? I lost my palette of those. Oh, here it is. So those were the other colors that I mixed. So you guys, you can mix whatever colors you want to, make your pastels just by adding that white to them. And then you can have your beautiful two-tone French designs for the summer. You guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully you'll give this design a try. If you do, make sure to post it on your social media. Make sure to tag Young Nails so that we can see that you are using these ideas. And I think that's it for the day. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you guys back next time. Thanks, everybody.